This footage is ancient, but it's been sitting on my computer, and if I don't do anything with it, it's going to bother me forever. Anyway, enjoy.
Question about advantage. What's the question, I wonder? What's the question? Answer about advantage. The artificer has mayonnaise and wants to exploit it. Huh? Spell that can be used as a megaphone? Thaumaturgy. Yeah. Should the anomalous objects of the SCP universe be detectable via detect magic? I don't think so, because the SCP universe has magic. So detect magic would detect magic. If you want to detect anomalous stuff, you would need like a, I think it should depend on the actual item. It depends on, yeah. Having a campaign soon, how many players should I invite? 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 10 to 15. I mean, it's up to you. I'm gonna be honest, 5 is the upper limit of a manageable party size in my experience. 7 is the most that I've run for, and it did not work. How many players should survive? Rules is written, there's no critical success or critical failure in skill checks. Rules is written, there's no critical anything except for hits. However, many tables choose to use these rules anyway. If you were the DM for your table, how would you implement them? Not at all. I don't use that. I think if the only reason that someone could fail is that they roll a critical failure, like if a 2 plus their modifier is above the DC for the skill check, they shouldn't be rolling the skill check. They should just succeed. If a 19 plus their modifier, the one thing that I will do is that when players decide I'm going to roll a perception check to look for whatever, traps or something, if they're just somewhere that doesn't have what they're looking for and they roll a 20, I'll have them find something unrelated that's useful. Like, oh, you happen to notice a coin on the ground. Oh, you happen to notice, I don't know, it depends on the situation obviously, but if players are requesting a check for something that I know doesn't really matter and they've already rolled and it happened to be a 20, at that point I just improvise something that's not like ridiculous but isn't a complete waste of the roll. The way that I tend to run games, if a player is failing something dramatically, it's because it's the consequences of the set of actions that they put behind that. So it's very... If you're having a normal fight, right, and you just want to stab the bad guy, and you roll a 1, I'm not going to send your dagger flying across the battlefield, because that doesn't make any sense. However, if you do something like make an attack roll with Alchemist's Fire on a pirate ship, and you roll a 1, maybe some of that Alchemist's Fire is leaking into the storage room that's full of gunpowder, and now that becomes everyone's problem. Also, you missed, because... obviously. Anti-caster faction tactics. What would be the best ways to combat magic without using it yourself? Disrupting concentration is a big one, and the thing is, it's very DM dependent whether something does or does not disrupt concentration beyond damage. Hitting someone in the face with an axe does have a chance of disrupting their concentration. Always, unconditionally. Unless they're immune to slashing damage, I guess. The Dungeon Master's Guide somewhere says... I think it might actually be the Player's Handbook. But somewhere the concentration rules do specify that you can trigger a concentration check on a spell just because of the environment. Like, oh, the ship's rocking back and forth. It's hard to keep your focus. So, if you have something very distracting, like a trumpet, and you just blast it in a caster's face, maybe that triggers a concentration check. Aside from that, if it works against artillery, it probably works against magic. Just wanted to ask a quick question about if I should warn players if they're about to do something really stupid but haven't realized. This stupid thing will nearly always get them killed. Is it worth it to kill them just to teach them a lesson? That's not how you teach people lessons. If you specify, hey, for the record, your character would probably realize that this is not a survivable situation. Like, oh, I'm gonna use the 2-person tent that I bought as a hang glider. No, you're not. Okay. Interesting. Monsters with class levels. Hey, that's what I made a video about earlier. Actually, did I put that in my D&D playlist? Oh, there are 2 things in the D&D playlist. This video is good. This one's not. Right, monsters with class levels. So, Emerald Dragon, level 15 wizard. How would a HP work? Take the hit die of the dragon and add 15 of them. How would this affect challenge rating? Go to the challenge rating chart, read your new HP values, find its best damaging spell, put that in as its damage value. You are able to calculate the new CR. At a glance, probably adding 3 or 4 to whatever the number is should be a reasonable approximation, maybe, for having 15 levels. If you had 4 levels, then you would just add 1 to the challenge rating. But also, that's as an estimate. That's not a guideline. You should use the actual CR table. How would this affect CR? It would probably increase it. Would the CR increase less than 1 point per level? Yeah, definitely. What kind of journal notebook do you use to keep track of your character and their stories? I actually have used World Anvil for this, but most of the time just kind of... I haven't played in person in forever because no one has. It's all up here, don't need notes. Based. I want to play D&D, but solo. How can I do this? Buy Baldur's Gate. Alternatively, you could try AI Dungeon, maybe, if you want. Or you could listen to one of these people who actually know what they're talking about. Why are current D&D video games bad? Oh. With the dueling fighting style, you do extra damage if you have a weapon in one hand and no other weapons. If you take the Tavern Brawler feat and have a bottle in both hands, do you do the extra damage with the bottle? In no circumstance. First of all, I don't think an improvised weapon actually counts as a weapon. But if it does, and you have a bottle in both hands, you're wielding 2 weapons. So no. What? Is there a character builder website? Yeah, it's called D&D Beyond, and it's fine. Homebrew inspiration rules for 5th edition. This could be interesting. A bit of background, I'm running Waterdeep Dragon Heist, not familiar with that. Felt like D&D lacked a bit of depth in the rules section when it comes to investigation and heist stories. That is fair. Let's imagine a crime scene where they need to make a deduction. That's a really weird way to use that word, but I guess it's technically correct. An intelligence investigation ability check is used, but it fails. As a DM, I don't have very good tools on how to do this situation, because I want them to find the clue. Well, if there's a clue that is key to storytelling, you don't lock it behind an investigation check. What you do is you have a bunch of information. There's the baseline, and that's just something that they need to know if they have any chance of figuring it out. And you give them that outright. And then you have additional details, and possibly you have connections between some of the details. And that's what you gate behind an intelligence check. I revamped the inspiration system to award stunts, which can be used to help in these kinds of situations. The heist pool is there to balance the actions and make the players feel like there are multiple forces working at the same time. The more they knock on doors and make a splash, the more interested the other factions. Constructive criticism on the rules. Okay. If you have inspiration, you can expend it when you make an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. And get a d6 inspiration die, and in the case of a successful ability check, the possibility to use stunts. Okay, so off the bat, I'm not big on using inspiration as a flat bonus rather than a reroll, because it makes bards less special. And also, the fact that it's just a d6 always means that it doesn't scale properly. The difficulty class of what you're doing is probably going to increase as you level up, so I mean, a +6 to a check is usually going to be helpful, but a +1 usually isn't, beyond level like Far. Awarding inspiration. Each session starts with inspiration. Okay, constructive criticism, your grammar sucks. But yeah, starting every session with inspiration is perfectly fine. That's often a fun way to use inspiration. The best way that I've seen that done is with the roleplay warm-up, which is at the beginning of the session, you just ask some possibly relevant, but not necessarily on-topic question to the party, and that helps get them into the sort of playing D&D mindset by getting them thinking about their character and such. And then once they answer the question, they get their starting inspiration for the session. You can be rewarded with new inspiration when your action is related to one of your personal characteristics. Yeah, that's kind of how it's supposed to work anyway. Inspirations don't stack. Again, that's just how the rule already works. Bardic inspiration is a separate... Yeah, this is unchanged other than a free inspiration per session. Stunts, this is the bulk of the homebrew, I would think. When you roll dice for an ability check and use inspiration, that check gives you stunt points. If it's successful, you can use the points to enhance the results of your action beyond the benefits of success. You may spend any stunt points you generate, or you must spend, or they disappear at the end of your turn. Okay, example. Interrogating a thing makes a charisma check. Okay, so the inspiration die itself is the number of stunt points you get. You haven't spelled out any sort of guide for how much a stunt point is worth, and I would say that if you do that later, you should move it to this section, just as an organizational criticism. Fortune points. Characters have a value which measures whatever it measures. It can be used to reduce received damage by 1 point by spending 2. Having to spend 2 entire fortune points to reduce damage by 1 suggests to me that a fortune point is not worth basically anything. They can also be used to improve the result of a die. You can make the die show the value of the number of fortune points you spend, up to 6. What? You can spend fortune points to make a die show the value of the number you spend, up to 6. So they're completely useless on a d20 roll. If you're using fortune points on a die, you're using them to increase your damage. Characters receive 4 fortune points on first level, and after that 2 per level. They're restored during downtime. I would say that this is an extremely... I don't think this system works, frankly. I don't think this works. This is a very sparse currency. You basically get twice your level plus 2. And that means that at level 20, right? At level 20, you're dealing with 22 points. That can reduce 1 damage roll by 11 damage. You have probably 100 hit points as a wizard at this point, and you've blown all of your points on that until you take a break from the adventure altogether. This is such a rare currency, and the effects are so minuscule. I don't think this works at all. Investigation stunts. This is where the prices are, I guess. The DM reveals a useful additional fact. Well, this is very thorough, this is very detailed, I'll give you that much. I don't necessarily want to go into the weeds of every individual stunt. Heist pool. This is the last bit here. Heist pool goes up when a character succeeds on an ability check and rolls a 6 on the inspiration dice. I don't know if... That's a very, very slim... Like, that's a very marginal situation. I don't know if this is supposed to be and or if it's actually meant to be or. A character spends 4 or more stunt points. Fortune points are spent. Characters complete a section of the adventure. Okay. Keeps track of the heist pool. Some actions like downtime can cool it down when it reaches 10. So this isn't really a pool so much as a meter. It's a gauge, a score, if you will. Heist score. When it reaches 10, the characters face a setback, a minor complication. When 20 is reached, must deal with a more serious setback. I mean, I guess that's fine. How much does it go up in all of these circumstances? That's not specified. So there's one comment. Or you could just, avoid critical skill checks so it's not an issue. That's fair, frankly. This is a very, very detailed system for what amounts to an edge case that only happens when you're not running a scenario correctly in the first place. As far as meta currencies go, in general, the closest thing to this whole system that I've experienced is Cortex Plus, the Marvel Heroic role-playing game. In that, it's much simpler. You don't have stunt points, you don't have fortune points, you don't even have, you don't have inspiration. What you have is all of this. Inspiration, stunt points, fortune points, this is all just rolled into one currency. It's plot points. You just have them. You have however many you have. You do, in fact, start every session with 1, and you can accrue more based on various circumstances. You can spend them on any number of things. Manipulating your die rolls. Well, you can spend them on a ton of different ways to manipulate your die rolls. And, there's a number of plot points that you can dump into a roll that makes it pretty difficult to fail. If you add a stunt die and a push die, and you keep extra dice in your total, and you keep an extra effect die, you're basically doing whatever you want at that point. But you've also blown like 6 plot points on one roll. And then the counterbalance is the Doom Pool, which is, it's a pool of dice. Cortex Plus is a dice pool system, so it's normal for that to happen, but the Doom Pool starts at usually 2d6, and then gradually more dice get added, or the dice in it get bigger, so it can go to a d8 and a d6, and then 2d8, and eventually you can end up with really wacky looking Doom Pools, like, this is what happens to your Doom Pool when you never spend it. And basically, the Doom Pool can be used for all the same things as plot points, but just it's shared among all the villains and antagonistic factions. It's the meta currency attached to the DM rather than any specific character. And plot points really are more attached to the player than the character that they're playing. They are tracked per character if you do happen to, for some reason, be playing more than one character at the same time. But, yeah, that would be what this reminds me of if it was more functional. And I do like Cortex Plus as a system. It's a pretty fun system. You definitely can't just grab those rules and dump them into D&D because the core resolution mechanic of the two systems is incompatible with each other. But, yeah, overall, I would say this is probably not an improvement over the system as written, and you really just shouldn't be gating vital clues behind a check if you're running an investigation. 2 words, Hecatonkari's Monk. I believe that is called The Way of the Astral Self. So yeah, that was the D&D Reddit.